everything 5G, also how to block it. We're going to talk about the 60 gigahertz frequency that actually absorbs oxygen. There's quite the discussion on the webs right now about the 60 gigahertz, but I want to set the record as straight as possible about what 5G actually is, at least according to the research, according to the telecommunication companies and the white papers. That's the information I'm going to present to you. And also, we're going to talk about how the Schumann resonance, nanny, recently spiked about 1,000%. So it hit 78 just a few days ago. And I haven't been keeping track as much since it reached 78 just a few days ago. But then later on in the presentation, I want to talk about not only how to protect yourself from 5G and EMF frequencies that could be harmful, possibly, according to some, but others say there's nothing to worry about. You can have a cell tower right next to your room and you can sleep with a router underneath your pillow and you'll be just fine. So you can decide for yourself what you think is the proper way to stay healthy and avoid, have certain preventative maintenance opportunities. But I will show you some options and some opportunities as well. I am going to show you the actual white papers and some graphs that talk about 60 gigahertz and how it actually absorbs up to 90%, 98% oxygen. Boeing and SpaceX have recently launched thousands of satellites into low Earth orbit and beyond, which are sending back frequencies up into the high millimeter waves. And I'll share that with you. Also, we'll talk about what these frequencies actually are, what microwave frequencies are, directed energy, artificial intelligence, the cosmic waves, the stars that are around us. And then we'll get into some of the fringe a little bit later. We're going to talk about poltergeists and ghosts and demons and frequencies and souls that maybe aren't willing to move on to the other side. So they might use some type of technology to stay busy. I'm also going to measure some frequencies. We're going to measure some radiation. I've got the Acoustic Meter here. This will measure frequencies, as you can see, from 200 megahertz to gigahertz. We're going to talk about 5G, actually the different applications of 5G. So there's been a lot of people that they've been trying to, I don't know, how do I put it? There was somebody who left a comment in the last video that I did, and this person claims to have all the answers. So that's fine. Let's talk about it. But 60 gigahertz is not the only frequency in the 5G spectrum. Not even close. As I said in the last podcast, if you look at the 5G 5th generation frequencies, they're running everywhere from 600 megahertz all the way up to 100 gigahertz. And I did even see reports that 200 gigahertz was possible, but that wouldn't be for telecommunications transfers. But we'll talk about that, and I'll show you the white papers, and you can actually see for yourself what the telecommunication companies such as Verizon, as an example, are saying. And most of the 5G stuff that they're talking about is going to be below 30 gigahertz. What is a gigahertz? A gigahertz is a billion cycles per second. It's a billion hertz. The Schumann resonance, the base is 7.83. So if you look at the other Schumann resonance, it's typically about 7.83. All right, let's get into this. Also, if you want to have some protective clothing, if you want to have protective liners, and if you want to have something that's actually good for the body, check out tinfoilcap.co, tinfoilcap.co. You can get everything from EMF blocking wallets. These wallets are great. You can get your phone. You put your phone in this thing right here. You see it's like a Faraday cage, right? So you put that in here, boom, you've got yourself a Faraday cage. You're not going to be radiating yourself with a phone. Now, even if you're not talking on your phone will be sending frequencies oftentimes. It will be pinging cell towers. So electromagnetic frequencies do emit from the phone, even if you're not talking on it. So I'll either have mine on airplane mode if I'm not using it, or I'll have it in my EMF blocking wallet. So you can get these at tinfoilcap.co. Now, this right here, this is the Acoustic Meter that I've got. This is one of the nicest ones I could find, specifically designed to pick up microwave radiation. And when I say microwave radiation, I'm not talking about radiation coming out of your microwave, it's certain frequency bands. As you can see right here, once again, 200 megahertz all the way up to 8 gigahertz. So that's 200 million hertz all the way up to 8 billion hertz, or 8 billion cycles per second. And that is in the very high frequency bands. Now, when you get into the 30 gigahertz, most of these telecommunication companies are going to be using below 30 gigahertz in their 5G spectrums and their 5G fifth generation communications. There are some options to go higher than that, and I'll share that with you as well. But the majority of them that I've looked at are below 30 gigahertz. Also, C60 purple power. This stuff is amazing. If you look at the white papers and the reports and the experiments that were done in laboratories when they were giving this stuff to mice and rats, and they were doing different experiments with radiation, this stuff has been very effective. I love it. I take it. I'm going to take a hero dose right now. So this is in the avocado. You can also get it in coconut oil. If you get it in coconut oil, it absorbs faster. So a lot of bodybuilders and athletes are using this stuff with the coconut oil because it just gives them that even faster kick. But I don't necessarily need a faster kick right now because I got plenty. Hello, Karate Kid style. Love it. Okay, so now I'd like to share with you. Let's get into the first segment here. Let's talk about 60 gigahertz, shall we? Let's talk about 60 gigahertz. I'd like to talk about that with you. Here we go. 60 gigahertz. Now, this article came out in 2001. This article came out in 2001. So here we go. We just look at it. Share screen. Boom. Okay. Now, this is at rfglobalnet.com. rfglobalnet.com. This is an illustration from 2001. This illustrates the atmospheric absorption for millimeter wave frequencies at the millimeter wave frequency of 60 gigahertz. The absorption is very high, with 98% of the transmitted energy absorbed by the atmospheric oxygen. While oxygen absorption at 60 gigahertz severely limits range, it also eliminates interference between same frequency terminals. As you can see right here from the graph that it is showing, it gets 98% of energy absorbed by oxygen at 60 gigahertz. Now, not only that, I looked at the other absorption. Check this out. This is from the article as well. Where are we at here? What screen are you guys looking at? I've got like 20 screens pulled up. Are we still on? Okay. Yeah, this is the ozone. So O3 is another, at 60 gigahertz, the extremely high atmospheric absorption level is due primarily to the molecular composition of the atmosphere. Figure 3 illustrates the atmospheric attention characteristics of wavelengths from 3 centimeters to 0.3 millimeters. For millimeter waves, like 60 gigahertz as an example, the primary absorption molecules are H2O, O2, CO2, and O3. So what do we got here? Water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and ozone. It also absorbs ozone molecules. Since the presence of O2 is fairly consistent at ground level, its effect on 60 gigahertz radio propagation is easily modeled for margin budgeting purposes. In addition, the high level of attenuation from oxygen absorption makes even the worst weather-related attenuation insignificant, especially on the short paths where 60 gigahertz systems operate. So, also describing how rainfall, bad weather, trees get in the way, it's not going to be able to send these fast signals. So these extremely fast signals, these millimeter wave frequencies, the antenna systems that they set up have to be a lot closer together. So that is very interesting. I just wanted to share that with you. Now, let's go to microwave ovens, right? Microwave ovens. Microwave ovens are using frequencies of 2,450 megahertz. So that's 2.45 gigahertz. Now, a microwave oven has also got a much better protective shield. So you can crank up the wattage. And I said in the last podcast that some microwave ovens are running in the frequency of 800 megahertz. I was inaccurate on that. Somebody corrected me on that. So thank you for correcting me on that. The majority of microwaves are using that 2.45 gigahertz. However, they are blocked and shielded much better Obviously, they're attempting to keep the radiation in the microwave to cook your foods. So now you have new technologies that are going to be using different frequencies. So let's go to the next page here. This is directly from Verizon. So let's take a look at it. I'll do a screen share with you. Screen share. The majority of 5G is going to be under 30 gigahertz. At least that's what they're telling us now. 5G bands in the electromagnetic spectrum. The 5G spectrum includes all types of spectrum, including low band and mid band spectrums of the 1G through 4G LTE frequencies, as well as the new high band spectrum, also known as millimeter wavelength. Verizon's 5G spectrum includes 28 and 39 gigahertz millimeter wave bands. So 28 and 39 gigahertz. That hurts a lot. The 5G spectrum will span the widest across the radio spectrum than any previous generations of cellular technology. Then it goes on to describe currently deployed 5G networks. Verizon 5G ultra wideband operates on a higher millimeter wave frequency with a wider spectrum bandwidth than previously cellular technologies. 1G, the first cellular, operated at 850 megahertz to 1900 megahertz. 2G, 3G added frequencies to their technology of 21 megahertz, and 4G added 600 megahertz, 700 megahertz, 1.7, 2.1, 2.3, and 2.5 gigahertz. The wider the spectrum, the more data that is able to transfer among those waves. Additionally, the later the generation of cellular technology, the wider the spectrum for transferring data. That's directly from Verizon. I've got all these links in the video description box. Now, let's go directly to the NASA.gov electromagnetic spectrum chart. Let's take a look at this for a minute. I need to make sure that, how's everybody doing? Wait a second. How would you know, Chris? Okay, so anyway, and you'll never know, Chris. All right. So radio, your radio captures radio waves emitted by radio stations, bringing your favorite tunes. Yeah, radio. All right, but let's look at the spectrums here. Let's get into this. You can see the further you go, X-rays, ultraviolet, gamma rays, you're getting into the extremely high frequencies, gigahertz and beyond. So this is from arrow.com. Now let's take a look at the 5G frequency band plans. They're much more complex, this article says. The frequency spectrum for sub-6 gigahertz 5G spans 450 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. Millimeter wave 5G frequencies span 24,250 gigahertz to 52,600 gigahertz. Shawing! And also include unlicensed spectrum. Additionally, there may be 5G spectrum in the 5,925 to 7,150 megahertz, 64 gigahertz, and 86 gigahertz range. Whoa! Boom! I better put on my 5G blocker for that one, like 3 of them. 86 gigahertz? Dude! Therefore, 5G will include all previous cellular spectrum and a large amount spectrum in the sub-6 gigahertz range. And beyond sub-6 gigahertz is many times current cellular spectrum. All right, now let's go to the next one, shall we? 5G. Let's take a look at 5G right here. Well, 5G, you can go to Wikipedia and you can read about it. They're showing you frequencies from 24 gigahertz reaching as high as 72 gigahertz, which is above the extremely high frequency band's lower boundary. So it's a short reach. They need more cells. The millimeter waves have difficulty traveling through walls and windows, and indoor coverage is limited. So they'll just give you more. So you can see mid-band 5G. Here's your mid-band 5G. 2.4 gigahertz, 4.2 gigahertz. So no, it's not just 60 gigahertz. So the person that told me in the last video that I didn't know what I was talking about, well, are you sure about that? Now let's take a look at this. Electronic design. The industry has had a wide range of radio spectrum frequencies from sub 1 gigahertz to 100 gigahertz. 100 gigahertz, folks, because they love you so much. They love you so much. So what is the current Schumann resonance frequency? Well, the base atmospheric electromagnetic resonant frequency is 7.83 hertz. This means our atmosphere is continuously resonating with a radio frequency of 7.83 hertz, along with progressively weaker harmonics. You can see the ranges right there, 14.3, 20.8, 27.3, 33.8 hertz. These are what is known as the Schumann resonance. Hello. All right. So let me get a drink of kombucha here to wash down the avocado oil and C60. You got to love kombucha, right? All right, let's talk about it. Word on the street is certain cities, certain big cities have launched this big campaign of 5G, releasing certain frequencies. One of those frequencies being this one right here. This one right here. Now, if 60 gigahertz millimeter waves are to essentially disrupt the oxygen levels and absorb up to 98% of the oxygen levels, as well as carbon dioxide, as well as ozone levels and water levels, then if that was, I don't know, turned up, would it have an effect? Would it have an effect on the human body? And then what would that effect be? Well, people have told me about that. So that's very interesting. 60 gigahertz. Now, if your Schumann resonance is about 7.83 hertz, well, we multiply that by, let's say, 850 million. So we multiply that by 850 million, and that's going to give us the gigahertz frequencies. That's going to get us up there in the gigahertz frequency band. So 5G, fifth generation, 600 megahertz. I've shown you that it's applications. They're looking at even going into 100 gigahertz. I haven't found anything the past couple of days showing 200 gigahertz. I'll have to look into that some more because I did find an article a while back that did talk about how there could be applications running as high as 200 gigahertz, but you would need technology for that as well. You'd need a certain antenna system. You'd need a certain amplifier system. You would need the technology as well. You can't just say, well, I got 5G, so I can make it run 50 billion gigahertz right now. You got to have something that's going to push that frequency. So that's why I'm telling you about the different ranges. If you've got something that's running at 600 megahertz, and let's say that's 5G technology, that's going to go a lot further than a 5G 60 gigahertz frequency. That thing's going to have that millimeter range. So there'll be walls in the way that can stop it, or a leaf or a branch or whatever. So Boeing and SpaceX have launched thousands. They've launched thousands of these satellites that are sending frequencies from the K band, the V band, and other bands that are running up to 52 gigahertz. So they're shooting that back down on you. They're shooting. So it's like, okay, you're trying to get away from 5G, right? So you're like, man, how do I escape it? I got satellites all over me now. So they got satellites, they got cell towers. They love you so much, folks. They love you so much. Why? Why is that so important? Like one solar flare could essentially wipe out almost all the satellites. We're at a grand solar minimum. I mean, the atmosphere is pretty weak right now. So there's even less protection. The other day, was it a KP3? I was talking to Diamond about the different KP ratios. If we had a KP0, there's virtually no protection from cosmic rays. So if we're at a KP0, grand solar minimum, we've got thousands of satellites launched up in the atmosphere. We get hit with the solar wave. I'm just trying to figure out what they're attempting to do. I mean, what's the purpose? Are they just launching up? They're like, hey, let's just see if it'll stick. Let's see what'll stick. So what else we got here? I'm talking about directed energy. Look up the different frequencies and the wattage used for directed energy opportunities. And then artificial intelligence. Now you've got an artificial intelligence network and a backbone where essentially everything could be hooked up to a computer system running these 5G networks, extremely fast, low latency. absorbing everything, replicating everything, and duplicating it in a simulation. So all these things are fascinating. Yes, you got to keep up with the Joneses as far as a scientist. I mean, we're doing the best that we can to have the edge. The military always wants the edge. I get it. But what else can this be used for? These satellites. Can these satellites, with the amount of frequencies that they can launch, connect with certain antennas? Let's say these are antennas here at home. Let's say these are, cell phones and computers and certain technology. Well, can these satellites send a frequency back to these towers? And if these are all frequencies shooting all over the place, can they use what's called cymatics? Can they use cymatics and then add aerosol injections in certain particles? And can that manipulate the atmosphere? Can that manipulate the weather? Can that manipulate you? Let's say you're really happy, right? And they're like, we don't want Bob to be happy, man. Let's turn this frequency generator on and let's give him a nice injection of 60 gigahertz. Let's take away 98% of that dude's oxygen just for a few minutes and see what happens. Let's see if he gets mad. Does he feel like he's in a box now? Man, I mean, it's pretty wild, right? So look up cymatics. If you don't know what cymatics are, I mean, you could throw some sand on a piece of paper. You can get a couple of Tibetan bowls and start going, whoa, 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 whoa. And then all of a sudden the sand creates these just incredible structures. So, I mean, I don't know. What does 60 gigahertz look like? What if you took 60 gigahertz and you took 1,000 watts of 60 gigahertz and you launched that, directed it right towards this piece of paper, and you put some sand on here? What kind of cymatics would that make? Would it look like the devil would be like, bah! Would it grow horns out? It'd probably grow like tell oxygen, boom. It's healthy, man. It's good for you. It's directed. There's less wattage. It's in the millimeter range, so it doesn't go through your body. Your skin stops it, man. There's nothing to worry about. Swing. That's why we're launching thousands of these suckers in the atmosphere, to give you back the love. Let's see what else we got here. So the spike, that 1,000% spike, or almost 1,000% spike recently, when the Schumann resonance was spiking up to 78, is that the Earth? Is it the Earth's natural defense mechanisms? Is the Earth attempting to balance out this technological synthetic construct that's manipulating frequencies, that's manipulating virtually every aspect of reality? And do you ever wonder why things are as calm as they are? I mean, with all of the data sets that people have been presented, it amazes me how calm the world is. It really does. So with that being said, as an observer watching the MFers play their games through the media, I mean, once you learn how the media works on a grand scale, their agendas are very easy to pick out. One of those agendas is, how do I put this? One of those agendas is giving them control, knowingly giving them control, thinking that you are going to be protected, right? It's the control protection scenario. How do I get into this deeper? Problem, reaction, solution. But then when people know, if people aren't in this confused state of illusion, if people are actually aware and they know what's going on, it's even more difficult unless you have the Zen factor. But that's a whole other debate. We'll get into that a whole other time. I've got a good friend that had a shamanic experience recently. Let's go back to electricity. The Amish are pretty smart. contrary to most beliefs in the technological sectors. Electricity. How powerful is electricity as a conduit to different dimensions? A friend of mine recently had a shamanic experience, and he accidentally summoned a demon that literally came out of his electronics. This thing was knocking over stuff in his house, physically knocking stuff over in his house. He turned off all the electronics in the house. It went away. He turned the electronics back on, and a little bit later, it came back. Turned the electronics off. He went outside. The thing left. He waited longer. I don't know how long he waited the second time, but it didn't come back. So now imagine a world that is completely encapsulated. It's completely covered with different electronic frequencies. And so now you've got this global web, not just a localized electronic grid, not just a state or a country or a continent, the entire planet. Reminds me of the Yaldabaoth octopus connection. If you ever look at that icon. So is that a deeper agenda? Are there actually entities that form consciousness at certain frequencies? And if that sounds too incredible to you, then what about some of the most incredible astrophysicists in the world that are describing the universe as being consciousness and different levels of consciousness? I'm going to have an astrophysicist on the program tomorrow morning at, I think, 10, it's either 10 or 10:30 Mountain Time. An astrophysicist is going to be on the program, and we're going to get very deep into the consciousness level of reality and how many different forms of consciousness, if everything is a form of consciousness. He's a best-selling author, so it's a surprise. So could there be, and then that leads to the question, what are demons, right? So if there's entities that are in different dimensions and they come into this dimension and they use electricity or technology as a form of a medium, as a form of exchange and as a form of energy and as a form of being able to move and traverse. What are demons? Are some of these demons souls that are not willing to pass over? Or are they maybe they're not able to pass over? Maybe there's trapped souls or certain people or entities that just didn't go to the next level, and now they're in this dimension that overlaps the 3D, but they need a way to communicate. They need a way to move around. And that medium could very well be different frequency bands. What are your thoughts on that? I want to get your opinions on that. Any questions? I'm going to stop here for a second. Look at the chat. Someone said, "Pound on your chest like you're an ape." Like, how's that, man? Yeah. Hello. Dude, this C60's got me like shawing. Oh yeah. How about this? How about Ra Castaldo, that was a guest on the show, one of the first podcasts that he did. You can find him on the Mystic Spiral. I'm going to have him on as a guest again as well. He brought up when he was a kid, he used to play with these beings that, like, he doesn't remember looking at outside of his peripheral vision. But he said one time they were trying to get him to like bite these electrical wires, and they told him, "Hey, bite these electrical wires and you can play with this forever." Spooky, right? Well, after that podcast, people had left comments in the comment section about how they went to school with kids that did the same thing. They bit the wires, electrical wires, and they had scars in their face and stuff. And it made me think about the movie Poltergeist. Moving through the TV. Oh man, I just got the chills. Whew. Remember that old dude, Poltergeist 2? Oh man, creepy dude. That was like the creepiest dude ever. Like if you think of the spookiest guy of all time in a movie, think of Poltergeist 2 and the old guy. I'm getting the chills just thinking about the dude. We're here. No, that was a different movie, but yeah, spooky. Okay, so questions. Shapeshifters. No, not Dumb and Dumber. That was oh, you want me to explain megahertz versus gigahertz? Okay, megahertz is 1,000,000 hertz. So that's 1,000,000 cycles per second. A gigahertz, that's 1,000,000,000 hertz. That's 1,000,000,000 cycles per second. The Earth's Schumann resonance is only 7.83 hertz. So when you're going to sleep, like let's talk about this. Let's talk about different states and different levels. Alpha state, beta state, theta state, delta state. If you're in the alpha state, your brain is probably running about 8 cycles per second. You know, it's about 8 hertz. It might be even less, like 6. But if you're all the way down into the delta state and you're sleeping, then you're in a very deep REM state. So you could be having extremely visual dreams. You might even be having an out-of-body experience at that time and not even realizing it. But there's different levels, right? Have you ever been driving in your car and you're jamming out to a song and you're just like, you miss your exit and you're like, whoa, man, I missed my exit. And it's because you got hypnotized by the music you were listening to. You just were in the zone, right? So that's probably the alpha state. But you get into these different zones, and if you learn how to lower your frequencies, then you can have some incredible meditation opportunities, etc. But now multiply the sleep state, or just the average wake state, multiply that by 500 million. Now you're getting up into the gigahertz range. Take your microwave. Your microwave's running 2.45 billion hertz or 2.45 gigahertz, but it's encapsulated, right? You've got a Faraday cage around it. You close it. Most of the radiation stays inside of that microwave. Now imagine in the near future, you have these MIMO antennas and these targeted antenna systems that are not much higher than your house. So the elevation of these things even oftentimes is below your house. And so now they're going to be on multiple city blocks because these are millimeter wave frequencies. So your 5G, these are targeted, faster download speeds, lower latency, dude. Yeah, man, I can surf the web even faster. Well, you're going to need to because you're going to be frying yourself. Now, then here's the argument. Here's the argument with that actually being better for you than 4G or 3G. Because the argument is, if it's in 5G and they've got these targeted antenna systems and they're running frequencies like, let's say Verizon is the one that I showed you earlier, is running at about 29.8 gigahertz approximately, right? That's below 30 gigahertz, but that's still up in the millimeter range. Then they're targeting these signals. So you're on your smartphone and it's going bang right to your smartphone, and it's a lower wattage and it's a higher frequency. So you're in the millimeter range. So it's not going through your body. It's probably going to stop within getting inside of your skin. That's the excuse they're going to use, or it might not even make it in the skin, just depending on who you talk to and what kind of clothing you're wearing. Like, I'll give you an example. I've got clothing. I'm not joking around about this. We are working on some incredible clothing and incredible gear that will literally block EMF radiation. So I showed you this right here. This is like a Faraday cage for your phone. You can get this at tinfoilcap.co. You put your phone in it. You can see right here, you put your phone in it, and it's got EMF fabrics, EMF blocking fabrics. So once you put your phone in here, you will not get a phone call. This thing blocks radiation. Now, if you need to get a phone call, you may not want to put this in there because you're not going to get a phone call. So, but it will block EMF radiation. Also, we've got clothing. So this is clothing with specific fabric that will block EMF radiation, right? So You can wear this under your shirt. You can wear this under your jacket. We've got for men. We've got for the ladies. We've got, like, see, different sizes. It's like a blouse, boxers, underwear. So this is specific fabric that will block EMF radiation. Now, also, to add to this, let me put this back real quick. Other things you can do as well. Check this out. So we've got liners. These liners right here, there's two different fabrics, okay? So this has got a copper-based fabric and a silver-based fabric that are woven together. These are all hand woven. The majority of our caps, unless you get the budget blockers, are handmade. So, but you don't even need to get the hat. These are what blocks the radiation. So we've also got what's called the Nephilim Liner. And you notice it has the discoloration in the copper here. That's totally normal. This actually adds to the cool factor. So it doesn't affect the quality in any way, shape, or form. It's a liner. It's going to be, you're not going to see it anyway. Patina. It's a patina is what it is. But just, there's been people before, they're like, oh, Rex, I noticed it was discolored on the inside. That's the way it's supposed to be because it's copper based. So it's just patina. That's fine. But anyway, so this right here, let me give you an example. I'm going to do a radiation test. So we're going to do a radiation test. This is a 5 gigahertz booster. This is a 5 gigahertz booster. So if you've got a router, which I do, I've got the router just in the other room, the router will bounce the frequency. It'll hit this, and then this will boost the frequency. And this will boost, I think it's running at 850 megahertz, the router that I've got currently. It'll boost from 850 megahertz. No, I'm sorry, it's running at 2.5. It's running at 2.5 approximately gigahertz. So it'll boost that up to 5 gigahertz, right? So I can just plug this in right here. Before I do, I want to show you the radiation. We're going to look at actual radiation right now. And every chirp that you hear is this picking up radiation. So you're going chirp, 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 chirp. That's the type of electromagnetic frequency that it's picking up, and it's converting it into a sound. It's converting it into a sound. Okay. So what were the numbers? What was it reaching? So, okay. This is the EMF manual that this came with, right? And then in here, make sure you can see this okay. This is a chart that shows different levels, different frequencies, different tests that were performed, and different values and measurements, etc. Now, if you look down here towards the bottom, okay, the Salzburg right here, see that? Salzburg study of 2002. Inside of homes, you can see the different frequencies that are inside of homes. Then it says how much exposure is considered safe at these studies that they did. You see that? 1 milliwatt per square meter is considered safe. 1 milliwatt per square meter. Now, if you're outside, you see that? 2002 study, above it, if you're outside, the levels jump up to 10. That's 10 milliwatts per square meter. Now, you could say, okay, so that's 10 millionth of a watt, Rex. That's not a big deal. And you're right. It's not over a short period of time. However, if you're constantly being bombarded with these frequencies, you can look at the research in the white papers, and what's considered safe is 10, right? So 10. Inside the house, they're saying 1. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody that's listening to this podcast right now, if you got an EMF detector, and you don't need to get one of these expensive ones, you can go out and spend $100 and get yourself a pretty good EMF detector. However, you need to make sure if you're going to get an EMF detector, the one that you pick up does have the capability to pick up higher frequencies, because you can go out and spend 30 bucks on an EMF detector, and that $30 one might only pick up extremely low frequencies, and it's not going to pick up the higher spectrum stuff. Like even this will not pick up 60 gigahertz. So if somebody's tagging me with 60 gigahertz right now, this would not pick it up. I'm in the process right now of getting some equipment that will measure frequencies all the way up to 60 gigahertz and beyond. The good news is right now, the majority of people that are being exposed to EMF radiation are getting much lower frequency bands, unless you're even in big cities, right now. Now there's a lot of chatter about that one place. You know what I'm talking about. And the, how do I put it? I need to drink some more kombucha here. You know what I'm talking about. Well, they're saying that there's a bunch of 60 gigahertz in that city. Can we verify that? Because if we could verify there being a exuberant amount of antenna systems set up that are using 60 gigahertz frequencies at that location, that adds a whole other level of darkness and control, in my opinion. That's a whole other level. That's a whole new ballgame. So, okay. Let's plug this in now. Let's plug this in. This is going to take a couple of minutes to actually start spewing an additional frequency. But when this thing starts spewing that frequency out, I'll turn this. Your phone. We're going to be turning up the EMFs in here right now. Boom, 15,000. Did you see that? It just hit 15,000. All I did was I turned on my phone. I didn't even make a call with it. I just turned it on. I did that immediately. 15,000. Bang! This isn't shooting out much yet. So my phone, I'm going to put this back away. See right in here. Faraday cage, put that away. Oh yeah, look at that. That sucker's tagging right now. 3,000 right now, 5,000, 3,700, 2,500, 3,500, 6,200. Boom. Let's do this. Okay, now what I'd like to do I have any, Yep, okay, perfect. Let's try this. So let's do this again. 3,700, 7,700. It's hanging at 4,000, 4,900, 7,500, 6,900. Okay. Now let's do this. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm covering this right now. It's still exposed, got some exposure because of the, but what I'm going to do is just give you a quick example, okay? Now remember, I've still got a router right there. I've got my computer right here. My cell phone I put away. There is still some exposure here though, but you will see a substantial decrease. 700, 1500, 800, 1150, 800, 700, 1000, 660. This is dropped by a substantial amount. Now, 300, 400, 500, 482, 414, 329, 283, 342. And the majority of that exposure is from the router right there. So as you can see, the way that that dropped, if I turn my router off there, then this whole thing would shut off because we're doing a live podcast right now. But if I was to turn my router off, would probably be hitting about, I don't know, 10, 15 milliwatts per square meter max. So anyway, these are stickers too. So these stickers you can actually take off, and these will block EMF radiation. I mean, they're not going to work as good as one of those liners, but if you've got something that's a small object, you know where that EMF is coming out, you could use these stickers. We've also got RFID passport sleeves. So you can put your passport in here. We've got credit card sleeves as well. And then the clothing. So I don't know. I think my next shipment's coming in, should be here in about 7 to 10 days. So Julian just made a bunch more. He just hand wove and put together a bunch more of these liners, and I should have them in 7 to 10 days. So if you order one, it's going to be about a week to a week and a half before I even get the stock, and I'll ship it out as soon as I get it. I mailed out 18 orders today. Went to the post office today, shipped out 18 orders. And what else? Another thing you can do is you can move out into the woods, right? You can move out in the woods. You can go into a cave. Caves are, they do a pretty good job blocking EMF radiation. So that's an option, right? What about that guy in the Ozarks that's doing that? There's a guy in the Ozarks, but every time there's a small earthquake, he gets kind of spooked out because the entrance into the cave sometimes disappears and he has to find other ways out. So it's kind of dangerous to do that too. But, EMF. Hello. All right. So let's see. What do we got here? I'm going to pull up the chat and see how everybody's doing. All right. What do we got here? What do we got? What do we got? Any questions for the crazy guy living in a van not down by the river? Yeah, I don't want to live in a cave. I don't think that'd be very fun. But hey, I mean, some people like it. So what can I say? What else we got? Yeah, we talked about the board. Looking to see if there's any questions. Does it get hot in the hat? I mean, depends on what you're doing. If you're like out in the sun, yeah, it'll get hot. I don't necessarily think it gets hotter than any other hat though. This liner doesn't really act as a additional coat or insulation. You know what I mean? It doesn't make it warmer or colder. I don't really notice a difference like with a hat with the liner without. What was I going to say? I was in California at the what was it called? What was that event called in California? There's a big UFO conference I went to last year out there, and I had the EMF detector with me, and everywhere I went, like even in the desert, I was in the desert in Blythe, California, in the middle of nowhere, looking at geoglyphs, right? And I was getting full bars. My phone, perfect reception. And when I was in the hotel out there at the conference, because there's a big conference out there, the lobby, even outside of the hotel, the amount of EMF exposure I was just like, whoa, it was wild. I did a podcast earlier before I got to that event where I actually pulled over off the side of the road. And the only place I got a reception at, because I was in the middle of nowhere, was close to this huge power station. And this power station was in the middle of the desert. There was these massive power lines, and I was not far from these power lines. And within 15 minutes, my fingers were tingling when I was out there doing that interview. I could literally feel it. My heart was beating differently. I was more agitated. I was more aggressive. And even when I left, I felt like I was just drained. I mean, I got to the hotel, went to sleep. The rest of the night, I was pretty much just done. So if you have a lot of electronics in proximity. You know, my friend Top Knot, really cool guy. His father-in-law recently passed, and he was telling me that his father-in-law was healthy until they moved into this one house that had these major power lines over the house. And so, you know, it could be just coincidence, but it made me question, you know, I was like, interesting. I wonder if there was some type of connection there, if that could have affected his immune system and lowered it to where, you know, it took away his life, or, you know, took away his life essence. So pretty wild stuff. So before I close out tonight, oh, hey, Top Knot, you're there, brother. How you doing, man? Good to see you. I didn't even know you were in there. I was in the zone. Isn't it? Oh yeah, there's been experiments with electronics and certain frequencies that cause hallucinations in people. So electronics and energy, even if it's synthetic, it's energy, right? So if all energy is alive at the quantum level, it's just a different construct. It's a synthetic construct versus an organic construct. Is there anything else that I could answer about hey, that's one. Okay. So I have, as I told you, I've got family that was on that ship, and one of them did test positive. The other one did not. The one that tested positive has no symptoms. And that person is in, so the other person's back home. I know I have to be, yeah. So we talked about this though. Well, like I said, they're both good, but one did test positive, so, but no symptoms. You are being MK Ultra through electronics. Must not assimilate. Oh, I've got a 5G blocker on, so I'm good. Yeah, they can't touch this. Hammer time. Oh, they're okay. Yeah, they're going to be fine. I think there's more to the story, folks. I think there's more to the story. However, I question everything and know nothing. Be the change you want to see. Hit that bell. Be well. And think good thoughts.